Welcome to Parev TV. Joining us are Asko, Akopyan, and Emile Ghessen. They are the producers and the director of 45 Days. This is the Fight for a Nation. It is a documentary about the war in Gharabal, which will be screened tonight, October the 14th, 2021, in New York City, and we hope everybody will attend. Oscar, let me start with you. First, let me congratulate you on this documentary. It is an educational documentary for Armenians, and especially, as you said, for non-Armenians who know nothing about Gharabal or the reasons of the conflict in the region. What was the response? What was this adventure like for you? What is it you're trying to achieve?
Yes, thank you for having us, Vartan. I appreciate the time, and thank you for the kind words. Yes, we early on decided when we were going to make the documentary that we wanted to make it more of an educational piece to make sure that we can try to educate the non-Armenian about the conflict in Artsakh. And also on top of that, we really didn't get much news media coverage outside of our local communities. So we thought if we can make a successful documentary that can appeal to the non-Armenian, and hopefully that can cross over to different states outside of just the Armenian pockets, and that way we can educate more non-Armenians about what happened here. And that was always the objective. And Emile, being there early on and documenting what was happening, we kind of started putting a storyline together on where it was going to go. So
Asko, it must have been a very uphill battle. I can just imagine the problems you had to overcome. I can just imagine that. I don't want to talk about the difficulties in getting to where you are, but what has been the response? Obviously, you've screened it in California. What has been the general response? How happy are you?
Yeah, we are extremely happy with the end product, 45 Days to Fight for a Nation. Every screening that we do, we get, it's an emotional journey, and naturally Armenians are gravitated to the idea of it. But it is also an inspiring piece, and it gives hope, and it gives you, it motivates you to keep going. So we are very happy with the result of it, and a lot of people at these screenings are some are surprised at how good it is actually, but we know how good it was. But it's giving it a chance for the community to see it, and the reviews have been nothing but good. Not just saying that because it's our documentary, but the reality of it is that no one's really come up and disliked the documentary so far. So I think we did a good job.
Emile, you were sitting there very quietly having your coffee, and you are the director of this documentary. What is fascinating about you is that you're a former British Royal Marines commando turned into a documentary filmmaker. And you were filming in places like Syria, Iraq, Gharabal, obviously, and other places. And what is it that drives you to these areas? How long have you been doing this? And what is the excitement? What is your message about this movie especially?
So yeah, I've been making documentaries since 2014, where I first covered the war against ISIS, and then the war in Ukraine, and now obviously the war in Karabakh. And what motivates me is telling stories, important stories that would go otherwise unheard. If it wasn't for, I'm not just saying me, but if it wasn't for independent filmmakers, independent journalists, a lot of information would not be out there, because the mainstream is under threat by funding. They don't have the funding to go out to do these large projects. So it generally relies on independents now that are going out and covering these stories. And I think very much the war in Karabakh and what 45 Days to Fight for a Nation documentary tells the story, that no one else has made a documentary of this quality or this humanization in depth, that knowing that we're documenting history. So when you watch the film, you see scenes in there that will go down in time where people will say, oh yeah, remember that happened in 2020 because 45 Days to Fight for Nation documentary. So that's what we're trying to do, is capture history for the future generations to actually go, yeah, well, that did happen. Especially when there's definitely a lot of people out there who are trying to manipulate the truth on what actually is the truth.
You know, you've captured amazing footage. And one thing, everybody will be impressed with something else, but one thing for me is to ask you, how does it feel to stand by a person who has to burn his house, leave the land, and burn the house so the Azeri will not occupy that house? How does it feel to look at the facial expression and the grief?
Yeah, that is a very good question. A lot of people say to me, oh, how does it feel to be on the front line? And since the age of 18, 19, I've been on front lines throughout the world. And I've seen many soldiers killed. And soldiers are soldiers. It's part of the job of fighting a war that soldiers will die. What hit me hardest emotionally for this documentary was seeing the people, the fathers, the mothers, the children, the ones who are affected by the war, just as much as the soldiers. And like you're saying there, we have a scene where a guy is burning down his family home, and it's, even in the documentary, I'm stood there and I'm like, there's nothing to say, is there? Because it's just trauma and just raw emotions. And the majority of people in the world, we couldn't imagine having to burn our home down. They're either you hand your home over to your enemy or you burn it down. None of us can live and even comprehend that. So really, it's hard to have empathy when someone's doing it, because you're like, well, I can't really understand what's going on here. So yeah, it's really emotional seeing this.
Emile, what reasons do you give for this war not having been heard about? People are so detached from that part of the world, know nothing about the history, know nothing about the conflict. What reasons do you give? Why did it not get the coverage we expected to get?
And this is something we talk about in the documentary, isn't it? Is because the world was busy with COVID. Every country had their own problems going on, thinking, well, we've got a lockdown, the rates of COVID are increasing, and the media very much quickly was spreading a lot of information about COVID. And then there was the US elections. So once again, there was a lot of talk about Trump. So when a small country like Armenia in a faraway land has a war between Azerbaijan over a disputed territory that's been going on for many years, really, the mainstream media really weren't interested in reporting on that. And that comes down to the fact is that most news outlets and companies are businesses. They tell the news, but really it's to drive revenue, profit, and sell adverts. So really, when their audience don't really want to hear about, or don't even know where Armenia is on the map, they're not going to tell them that story. So they move on very quickly. And that's why, like I was saying earlier, it's very important for independents to go out. And that's why we had to do this film, is so it doesn't get forgotten about in time.
Asko, you are an independent body, and Emile just mentioned the funding, the problems. What are some of the most challenging problems movie makers, producers face, besides money? I mean, money we all know, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, being an independent filmmaker, the biggest problem is raising financing for your project. In this case, you know, being a war documentary, you know, essentially that's what it started as. No one really, you know, there's no money in that sector. You know, these are hard films to sell. You know, it's not a mainstream appeal.
Sure.
It's not, the marketing isn't there for such a type of film. So we had to get creative, and before, you know, meeting Emile and working together, he had already started a GoFundMe campaign, and during the production, you know, during the shooting, while he was on the front line. And when I quickly came on board, you know, with him, we decided that if we're going to do it right, we need a bigger budget. And I had my line producer do a real budget of what it would cost for this to be of the quality that a big distributor can pick up. And then we went back and did another GoFundMe campaign, and not to Emile's surprise, because he had such success with the first smaller campaign, but the Armenian diaspora, really mostly from Los Angeles, you know, came through with helping us push this across. Even with these screenings, you know, most of these screenings cost a lot of money. Just theater rentals during COVID are a real pain, you know. So again, the diaspora is coming through with helping us move the documentary in the right direction, so a lot of people can see it, and then they spread the word, and then we get some attention, and hopefully it ends up on a really big platform where the rest of the nation can see it. So that's how we did this one. And
Oscar, you know, today in Armenia and the diaspora, we all are still bearing the pain of the loss of the 44-day war or 45-day war. The soldiers who died, the soldiers who were wounded, the missing soldiers, the economy, the COVID. And Armenia isn't really in a bad situation. Many people have one question in mind: who do we blame for this loss? Who do we blame?
I don't think, I don't see why people need to blame anyone, really. It's happened, and I think a lot of people, when something doesn't go in their favor, they want to blame someone, but I don't think challenging their energy into blaming someone is going to help the future of Armenia. Where they need to channel their energy is where they go next. And we talk about that in the documentary. It's like, what do we do? What do, as Armenians and diasporans, what do you do next? Rather than sitting there finger pointing and go, who do we blame? Do we blame the Turks? Do we blame Pashinyan? Do we blame the economy? What do we blame? The military? No, it's don't blame anyone. It is what happened, deal with it, process it, and move forward in the sense that, what do you do with that energy? Where does Armenia go next? And in the documentary, we have an interview with Eric, who's a political analyst, and he says losing the war, yeah, and he's brilliant. And he says losing the war isn't the end of the world, it's what you do next that counts. And he even says America hasn't won since 1945, Germany hasn't won for years, Israel is, I think far too many people can sit there and just think, who do we blame for this, and sitting there like a feeling sorry for themselves, rather than going, okay, we've been hit down, let's stand back up and let's move forward. And from my experience, the Armenian people are very resilient people. And I think they will move forward with this, because Armenia is a great country.
Emile, I think that the message is a very powerful message. You just spoke about, what do we do next? You know, we cannot change the past. And I thank you for answering it so bravely. Oscar, in closing, what would you like to tell viewers of this interview? There is a message you would like to send out to people in New York, or people who may see
the immediate message is, you know, it's really hard to market a film, you know, in a city that we're not from. You know, we don't have a lot of connections here. We do have a nice Armenian community. So I would like to tell anyone that's watching, if you're free tonight, 7 p.m., you know, attend the screening, SVA Theater in Chelsea. And watch it. A lot of people that we've been hearing throughout our journey that they feel like they're not ready to watch you know, the closing chapter of, you know, of the Armenians. And we say, well, it's not really about that. We have to accept it and process it. Yes, it's emotional and it hurts, but it's really important to give it success, and the way we give it success is by viewers. So that's just how the business works in the film industry. So, and the base of this documentary is the Armenian diaspora, so they all have to fully support. You know, anytime we come into your town, you have to be there.
And that's a good thing that Asko was saying there. Many people going, oh, well, you're targeting Armenian areas where you're going around the US on this tour, and it's like, we're just two men trying to tell this story, but we need the help from the diaspora to share that information, to amplify it to non-Armenians as well. And we say to people, bring a non-Armenian friend along with you. If you don't want to pay for the ticket for them because you can't afford it, we'll give it to you for free. There's no cons on that. Anyone who can't afford a ticket, we'll give them it for free. Anyone who's a veteran, serving in the military, or works in hospitals or emergency services, they have free tickets. It's about getting people to watch it, and people help and assist us promote it.
Emile, what is your final comment about this whole experience? Wrap it up for us.
Well, yeah, in the last 12 months, I've only spent 5 weeks back in the UK, so I've spent majority of it in Armenia. I just think that why we're so passionate about this story is because it's an important story to tell. And we don't want what happened last year in 2020 to go unforgotten. We want people to remember it. We want to champion the Armenian cause. We want people that are suffering from post-traumatic stress and mental health as well to awareness be raised for that. We work with several charities that were helping champion projects in Armenia. So we want people to come out and watch this documentary, support it. So the international community and people like me, who didn't know very much about Armenia over a year ago, knows a little bit more. So hopefully to prevent future wars in that region.
Asko, Akopyan, Emile, Ghessen, thank you very much for your time, for your efforts, for your creative art, and for sharing your experiences and stories with mankind. And I thank you for making this a better world for all of us. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much.